Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners Workshop. This morning, we'll be discussing capital improvement program and we'll have a budget discussion. If you now please all rise and join me as we honor our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now I'd like you to join me in a moment of silence. I give you a chance to reflect on anything that you think is important, but I'd like to have you include things about how thankful we are to live here in Flagler County and in the free state of Florida. And also think of our men and women that are our first responders and our men and women in the armed forces standing the watch. Thank you. Join me. Thank you. Well, again, welcome. Glad to see we have an audience today. First up is the capital improvement program discussion. Ms. Petito.
Good afternoon. I apologize. I think we forgot something upstairs, so Mr. Eichinger will be handing you a copy of the presentation in case you want to take any notes or follow along. I'll just give him a minute to hand those out before I start. So you should have in front of you now a copy of the presentation, followed by a list of the capital improvement program for fiscal years 2024 through 2028, as well as a list of county services or programs that are not required by statute or tied to strategic plan. I'm just providing that to you because that's out of the request of a couple of the commissioners who asked for a copy of that. But we'll go ahead and get started. Does everybody have those documents? You should all have them, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, based on the guidance and feedback from the board, and to be able to provide more opportunities for public input, so far we've had several budget workshops, probably more than in most previous years. We started this process back in December of 2022. Through the adoption in 2023, there will be a total of 10 meetings scheduled. Here's a look at those that we've already completed. I think you're well aware of those. And then here's a look at the meetings that we have remaining. Starting with today, August 7th, I'm going to present to you the capital improvement program for fiscal year 24 and be able to have a final discussion as we move into our first public hearing, which is going to be scheduled for September 6th at 5:01. Throughout the budget process, we go back to our strategic priorities, the priorities set by this board through their policies. And so when we created the fiscal year 24 budget, it's based on the strategic priorities of the board, which is creating a focus on effective government, economic vitality, growth and infrastructure, as well as public health and safety. So here's a look at our anticipated capital improvement program for fiscal year 24. We're going to start with the capital preservation projects. These are all funded through your general fund. We've got just under $1 million going into preservation projects. Then we're going to take a look at our capital improvement new construction projects for next year. Largely, these are coming out of grants, whether it be legislative appropriation grants or the mitigation things that run through FDEM as far as funding for grants at the EOC roof. So largely, these are not your local tax dollars. These are coming from other funding sources. Here's a look at the technology projects that we have allocated for next year, as well as the tourism development, beach renourishment funding. When you look at those two, we've got, you may notice on there, it's split funded when you have the unmanned air system. That's a drone replacement. It's actually going to be equipped with LiDAR. So as you know, prior to a hurricane or even after a hurricane, we'll go out and actually shoot that footage. This will give us the ability to do it in-house. So that is something that we can do more frequently. It is split funded because it will be not only utilized at the beach, but it will be used at the beach. It's an appropriate use of the fund to split that between the general fund and then your tourism development.
Does that mean it costs twice $137,500?
Correct.
Okay.
About $270,000 roughly. But every time we shoot LiDAR, I think there's a cost, it's somewhere around like $65,000 just to shoot LiDAR. So when you think about it, if you use this only for the beach a few times, I mean, it's going to start to pay for itself. So this is something that we intended to use not just for the beach. It'll also help as we look at some of our road network and other areas where we may want to capture that type of detail. So here's a look at your impact fee projects for next year, as well as your constitutional gas tax, and then your half-cent sales tax.
Heidi, Chair, I have a question real quick on this.
Yes, ma'am.
The Old Hall Creek Road project, is that paving, that grant?
So that is something you're going to see on August 21st as a agenda item that's going to come before you. And you'll see this actually on another slide where it'll show you the total project, how much is actually general fund and how much is coming from FDOT. So it is part of your 5-year work plan. Originally, when we started working on the budget, there's a local component to this because of the shortfall. It still needs to be bid out. Once it comes back in the form of a bid, we'll know more definitive what that local portion, that shortfall looks like. Right now, based on engineer estimate, it's expected to be a little over $1 million short. We were able to move some funding around with the use of impact fees on projects, passport revenue on projects, as well as securing other grants to free up about $1.1 million so that we could cover the current local shortfall. As it comes in through the bid process, there may be an opportunity to offset that difference, if there is any difference, with impact fees for transportation.
It's for paving.
It's for paving. So Old Hall Creek, part of it right now is already paved. So it is a resurfacing project, but then it's going to be a pavement for the dirt road section.
Okay, thank you.
And typically, I think our county engineer has stated that some of these projects, in addition to that, they look at some other improvements, whether it be stormwater. It's bringing it up to the FDOT standard. So it's probably a little bit more than just a pavement. So this is a summary. If you're looking at all of the slides that we saw previously, it shows you the funding source and the total project cost. So it kind of breaks it down, the first column being the general revenue, followed by passport, grant funds, impact fees, TDC, and then your half-cent sales tax. So over the course of fiscal year '24, we anticipate about a little over 45 million in your capital projects. And that doesn't include if we have projects that had already either been started or partially funded in the previous year. Those projects actually move forward because they're not complete, and so they'll roll over as part of that carry forward process. But this is new. This is new money that we're allocating for next year.
Yes, Dave?
That's great. I just want to make sure that people understand that half-cent sales tax listed here already exists. It's not the one we
That's correct.
Correct.
state for the public.
So I'm going to spend a little bit more time on our 3 major projects that you have in a little bit more detail, just to give you an update as to where we're at with those. First one I'm going to start with pertains to fire rescue. So as part of this process, as you know, we are in a need to replace several fire stations. So the first one that we had started, it actually started this fiscal year, but it will be rolling over to the next fiscal year, is the fire station project on the corner of County Road 305 and State Road 100. So I'm just going to give you a little overview where we are with that, as well as some other projects that we have on the horizon. So with the looking at the project history on this, back in 2017 is when the county purchased the property located at 245 County Road 305. That's the property that sits in the southeast corner of the State Road 100, 305 intersection. There was a delay in getting this project started due to some funding challenges, but in fiscal year '22, we started allocating money towards the project. We had allocated $4.1 million back in fiscal year '22. That's when the county started the process of going out and hiring an architectural engineering design firm. Through that process, we awarded the contract to Schenkel Schultz Architecture, and they started working on task one, which was really the planning and schematic design. At the time, it was going to be for a 12,000 square foot fire station. As we started working through this process, we quickly realized that the cost of construction has significantly increased. So it allowed us to take another look at this project. So in the following fiscal year, we added some additional funding to the project. So we had added some additional monies there. And then early on in 2023, this year, the cost estimate to do that 12,000 square foot facility was just under $9 million. At the time, we didn't have the funding for that, so we took a look at it and how can we maybe scale back on the facility and still be able to construct something out there. So when we were looking at it and working with our fire rescue department as well as our consultant, Schenkel Schultz, we were able to reduce about 2,000 square feet from the design, and we were able to kind of simplify some of those design aesthetics with the appearance and what type of materials they were using, so that we were able to come up with a project that would now be 10,000 square feet and would have a project budget not to exceed $7 million. So that's where we were as of June of this year. And then earlier today, you approved the approval for task two, which is going to be for them to continue to finish the design, see us through permitting and construction administration. We're currently advertising or getting ready to advertise for construction manager at risk on this project. It's an opportunity to help, bring in the project as far as cost overruns, providing for a guaranteed maximum price, and work with our design firm to look for additional opportunities to maybe lower that cost. So as part of your fiscal year '24 budget, we're going to be increasing this project by $600,000 to get us up to that $7 million mark. So when we look at the project scope, we were looking at the 10,000 square feet, which is the gross square feet, and then you've got 8,600 square feet, which is really for the program. It takes out any internal, walkways and stuff like that, hallways. So the project will include a well and septic. This area is not served by municipal utility service. We also have to bring in a water storage tank to help fill up the fire trucks, and it will have a generator installed. Again, the project budget was not to exceed $7 million. So when we're looking at the building footprint, we're kind of breaking it out by use. So administration is about 320 square feet. The apparatus bay and support rooms really take up the largest portion of the facility at just over 5,500. The what's known as like the day space and crew quarters is about 2,000 square feet. You also have building support, about 445 square feet, and that's largely like your mechanical rooms, things like that. And then we did add an area for public access and an office for a sheriff's deputy if they needed to meet with the community out there, write a report. We wanted to be able to provide space to them.
Quick question. The red roof building that's there now, we're just going to keep that as storage?
We're going to talk about that when we talk about Station 62 and the Bunnell Station. There is an intended use for that facility. It would be great for Public Works to be able to store their equipment and operate out of that facility. We're currently using it as storage, but you do not have restroom facilities. It's not built out. It's really just a shell. So it would take a little bit of money to put in a well and septic, and also build out the offices, bathrooms, but continue to use it for storage of equipment, but also the field personnel. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on one of the other
I'm
slides.
sorry.
Yep, that's okay. So this is the site plan of how it would look off of County Road 305. Just kind of giving you an overview of what that site plan would look like. We've got 20, I think it's a total of 24 parking spots, 20 for crew and staff, 3 for the public, and 1 that would be ADA accessible. There is an exterior patio that adjoins to the living spaces off of the kitchen area. So if they needed to have like a barbecue grill or an area for them just to go outside. I mentioned it earlier, it does come with a generator, and so you see like that service yard area in pink, that's what that is. The septic and drain field would have to be installed. There'll be a dumpster enclosure. The fueling depot, it'll be a 1,000-gallon tank with a dispenser. That is one of the options that I'll show it to you. It may be something that we hold off on, especially as maybe we talk about development of the rest of the site, which would include co-locating Public Works out there, because it may have to be increased and relocated so that it's not right there on the driveway for the fire station. It would also be equipped, as I mentioned, with the storage fill tank, about 8,000 gallons of water. And then you'll have another storage tank which will support the fire suppression or the sprinkler system for the fire station, which is a requirement to have, especially sleeping quarters. So here's a look at the public entrance when you're looking at the conceptual front elevation. And this is one of those design aesthetics that they kind of scaled back on. You can kind of see it's that cut face brick approach, similar to what you'll see up in St. Johns County. We think that it would look nice in that area as, you know, a complementary building. Here's another conceptual front elevation of the apparatus bays. And then here's a look at what that floor plan would look like. I know some of these numbers and letters are a little small, hard to see, but just to break down what that conceptual floor plan looks like. Again, the administration was 320 square feet. It's a reporting office. You have another office, janitor closet, and part of the public restroom. The apparatus bay and support function is for your medical storage, your mechanical, electrical. There's a small workshop. Areas our current stations are not equipped with, but decon and decon restroom with shower, so that when you have employees that have been exposed to either fire and they need to shower off, this is one of the big push for the cancer initiative with fire rescue at the state and national level, is to be able to not bring in your contaminated clothing and gear into the fire station where you live. This would provide them an opportunity to shower and get cleaned up outside. And then it's off of the apparatus bay area. There will also be areas for your personal protective equipment or your gear storage. And then you have your self-contained breathing apparatus storage area, as well as where you would park your trucks and equipment. Your day space and crew quarters consist of your kitchen, pantry, dining, the day room, laundry area, a small fitness room, along with 6 individual dorms. and it includes 2 restrooms with showers. Your building support area is for your IT connectivity, water pump, fire pump. And then, as I mentioned, as you're coming off of the Bay Area, part of that contamination effort is to have 2 individual airlock vestibules so that you're not, having contamination into those living quarters so that everything kind of stays outside. So that would be new, something that we don't currently have in our current facilities. And then, as I mentioned before, you have a public access area with a report writing room for the sheriff's office. So here's a breakdown of the cost estimate summary. Through the process with Schenkel Schultz, they actually were able to get some schematic design cost estimates provided by 2 firms. I believe it was KMI International as well as Wharton Smith. This cost estimate was originally for the 12,000 square foot facility. It was taking the approach of bringing in the project, cutting square footage. The same ratio is how we were able to determine that we were able to bring this in at. I know it shows a little over 7 million. We're hoping that we can bring that down within the 7 million. It does have contingency in it, but we're hopeful. We've got a couple potential cost estimate savings that we can share with you. But I think once we're able to get a CMAR and kind of hone in on that guaranteed maximum price, we should be able to do it. But as I did mention, there are some potential cost estimate savings. Bringing on that CMAR during that design phase is definitely going to help control some of that cost. There are also opportunities for owner direct purchasing. This is something that we've done in the past with the Sheriff's Operations Center to realize the tax savings on the items. And then I mentioned the delay in the installation of the fuel depot. Right now, what they would have to do is either fill up here and/or fill up at the gas station that's out there in the community using their gas card. It's not uncommon. They do that now, so it would just be a temporary delay in putting in that fuel depot. So this is a breakdown of the fire station funding showing the increments over time where we were able to build up this project. Initially, it had started with the 4.1 million, adding the additional 400,000 to it, and then next year adding the additional 2.5 out of the half-cent sales tax. So that way, we now have $7 million to construct this facility. Here's an estimated timeline. Today, you approved the commencement of Task 2. With our consultant, we're preparing the advertisement for that construction manager at risk. We're hoping in 2 months to be able to award that contract and move forward with the approval of their contract. The design for the fire station should be complete in March. And then we will be preparing the advertisement for construction in April, hopefully awarding the contract in June, and also getting permits at that same time. And then we look forward to completing this project with a ribbon cutting sometime summer or fall of 2025. I mentioned previously about Station 62, which is your current Bunnell station. That we occupy. The building is currently owned by the city of Bunnell, but utilized by Flagler County to provide services to their.
Heidi, can we go back a slide, please?
Sure.
Quick question on the existing bill, on the larger parcel, 25 acres with the existing building on there. The building itself is about 4 acres. How many acres does the new station need?
I don't know if they had told us how much does it need. I know rule of thumb, what we've been using somewhere between 3 and 5 because there will be some stormwater improvements that need to go in, so somewhere between 3 and 5. I don't know for sure how much they were looking at for the footprint I don't know if we have that in a document somewhere.
I'm just wondering if we have a lot of excess land. Is there potentials to, in site planning, to be able to save some or sell some of that parcel out there to recoup some costs?
I think when you, I don't know that we looked into doing that. I think there are services that, and I don't know if I need to go back to the aerial. The only place that I could see that maybe would be of value, I can back up if you want. It's on the, looking at the, let me bring it back.
The only reason is I'm looking at the, we were taking the highest value corner of the property, which leaves odd angles, and I'm just wondering if we might ask the architect to do a slight bit of investigation into shifting of the site. I don't know if we need all of that acreage, but I think there's a potential to be able to, and I'm not sure of the value, but to recoup some costs potentially if we don't need all that acreage.
I don't know that we don't need it, especially if you ended up moving Public Works out there with the amount of equipment and staff that they have. So in looking at, and I understand that it's kind of small, but when you're looking at the footprint of the property, the fire station would be located north of the existing facility. So it would fill in that space, that grassy open space, just south of State Road 100. You would gain access off of 305. So that piece to the north is where the fire station would be located. The piece to the south would be what you would be developing for Public Works. The only piece that I could think of that, and it really doesn't have connectivity unless you maybe came through the driveway that exists on State Road 100, but it would be that little piece to the back. I don't think I have a pointer on this thing.
Yeah,
but
I don't want to belabor it. There's 25 acres, which is, I think it's worth some investigation just to see if.
We could put softball fields in a picnic area.
Okay, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Trying to repurpose money is one thing.
Trying to see where I left off here. I think we went through those milestones already. I think this is where we left off.
This is where you were. Yep.
So in looking at the additional projects that we have, we had submitted a legislative appropriation request to ask for money to construct some fire administrative headquarters as well as relocation of Fire Station 62, which is for the city located within the city of Bunnell. We are looking to utilize, when we wrote the advertisement for Schenkel Schultz for those design engineering services, we did it with the mindset that we would have other facilities that we would be designing. So the thought is that we would utilize that same architect engineer and potentially the same contractor, construction manager at risk. We feel that there is some economies of scale and some cost savings by doing that, especially as we're going through the process now. For this project, even though we had the $10 million legislative appropriation, the total project for this is going to be $12.4 million. We believe that the construction piece will not exceed the 10 million, but originally when we were looking at it and setting money aside, we don't know exactly where the facility will be located in Bunnell. I show you one option because we already own the property. It's where the old jail used to be constructed across the street. It sits behind the existing Station 62 right now. And it's actually two parcels, so you have the parcel to the west, which is where the jail was. The parcel to the right is an area that had been formerly used by DOT. It's kind of like a DOT service yard. It's where land management currently works out of. They actually occupy the offices over there. And then that storage area is where we're currently storing some equipment, surplus things as we either take it in or get it out. So the thought with this is if we were to utilize land that we already own in Bunnell, which is possible to do, you wouldn't have to spend the $2.4 million that we have earmarked for additional land. It would free up funding that you could then build out the Red Roof Inn, or what we call the Red Roof Inn, for Public Works. You could put in the necessary improvements. You could put in the fueling depot. It would come at a savings from not having to go out and buy land. The other thought with this would be it would help probably with getting the traffic light in front of this government complex and the fire station. If there is a local match or a need to come up with some local share on that traffic light, this would be an opportunity to use the money because you're not having to buy the land. And, it would just free up space. I think one of the challenges that we have is that we don't have adequate space for staff. We don't have adequate places to store stuff. So by relocating Public Works out to an area that they provide service, it frees up a lot of equipment storage and space currently in this complex. It would then free up 3 offices that land management could move into. So it kind of, it's a kind of like a domino effect. It's kind of thinking big picture and what are the challenges and what are the needs. The Red Roof Inn build out for Public Works is something that we have on our unfunded list for our capital projects. And we'll talk a little bit more moving forward because there are other opportunities with another project that we have. Just makes sense maybe to repurpose. So the other project that we're looking at is for an additional fire station. It would be the relocation of Fire Station 71. We are looking at writing a grant through the Resilient Florida implementation grant to, we have that coming, I think, on your agenda in August 21st. But it would be to construct a fire station in the area down around Cody's Corner, understanding that there's going to be potential growth coming through the city of Bunnell along County Road State Road 11. So this provides an area where, again, we have currently have some property, may need to acquire a little bit more, but it is an area that we are looking at writing a grant for. Currently, your Station 71, it's located close proximity to the new station that's going to be built at 305 and State Road 100. The current Station 71 was not intended for career. It was built as a volunteer station. It has its challenges. It floods. It floods into the station and into the living quarters. The location where it's currently at is not big enough to build a larger facility there. You also don't have enough separation between well and drain field to be able to expand. So you're kind of limited on that facility, which is why we're looking in the future as to where else can we relocate and, potentially have a funding source to help pay for it. That brings up the next big project that we have, which is the Flagler County Nexus Center, which would be located in this complex across from the sheriff's office. And some of this you've seen before, but just to provide the project history, this started as a discussion about building a Bunnell branch library. Over time, this has changed to be a joint use facility, so it's not just the Bunnell Library. And going back, this process started back in 2018 with the hiring and selection of a firm to design the facility. Bringing it forward, we had a delay due to some funding challenges. But in 2020, the county had purchased property out of library passport revenue. And then we started the master planning with the consultant. As this project moved forward, we again quickly realized that due to construction costs, it was apparent that, we needed a lot more money to be able to build this facility. So as we started working through the design phase, we got to 15% design, and when we got that cost estimate, that's when we decided we needed to reduce the square footage of the facility, and then we also simplified the design aesthetics. So when you look at what the project scope entails now, again, it is that joint use facility, it is the Bunnell Branch Library and administrative offices. It brings in the component of Health and Human Services, which is currently located out on Belterre. And then it also provides a conference center, community room, which is a location that you can have your congregate meals, your senior programming. Currently, as you know, we rent space for the Bunnell Branch Library when they got relocated for the SMA Community Access Center. And then we're currently renting space at Church on the Rock to be able to hold your senior programming and congregate meals. Between those two rental agreements, it's approximately about $65,000 a year for rental space at those two locations. Roughly about $41,000, I believe, is Church on the Rock, and then the other piece is the rental at Marvin Gardens for the library. This would be an opportunity to save that money and not rent space. So as the scope of the project changed, the original, as I stated, was going to be 33,000 square foot. We've revised that scope and reduced the size down to 22,000 square feet. You've got the library at 55% of the building, the community and pre-function lobby at 24%, and then the Health and Human Services office space at 19%. With the square footage reduction, you also have a parking lot reduction, so it went from 161 down to 129. We've simplified the aesthetics, no longer have a covered porch and outdoor amphitheater. You just have a covered canopy or portico. And we were able to bring that cost down to $16 million from $24. So here's the site plan at 60% design. They're still working on this project, but that's how it would sit on the property as you come down Commerce Parkway along Sheriff Johnson Drive. Again, I know some of these are hard to read, so small, but this is the floor plan at 60% design. Here's what the conceptual elevation would look like. We haven't fine-tuned the colors, but that's just a rendering that they provided. And then as you look at the Nexus Center, the library details, it'll be equipped with your youth and children story time area, your teen collection with a teen technology room. You'll also have some shared program space between your children and your youth. You'll have the adult collection. You'll have 12 public computer stations. You'll also have, again, high-end technology recording and podcast room. You'll have your innovation lab and your multifunction room. And then you'll have 2 family restrooms. And then moving over to the community side and the Health and Human Services, you'll have a large meeting room with a divider wall that'll be able to host anywhere between 250 to 325 people. It'll also be equipped with a commercial-grade catering kitchen. It'll be an area that can be rented out to the community. It'll have a pre-function lobby space with a micro market, public restrooms, family restroom. I mentioned the wraparound portico. On the Health and Human Services side, this will provide them with some professional office space with a private entrance. They'll have their own lobby and reception area. They'll have a total of 4 offices, and then they'll have open workspace for about 10 cubicles, 3 consultation rooms when meeting with the public. It'll also have a conference room and an area for storage. It'll have a staff break room and then 2 restrooms. Currently, they're located on Belterre in an area that was part of the Council on Aging. It's an area that's had renovations over a period of time. It's not currently conducive to have areas where you can meet with the public and consult with them in a more private fashion. They're definitely crammed for space. This would be an opportunity for them to move into much larger facilities and would still have opportunity for a little bit of growth and expansion as the community continues to grow. As I mentioned with that fire station, if we decided to move forward with utilizing the land across the street, it would be an opportunity to look at the facility on Belterre Parkway as an area that you can move public transportation. If you've been in the community for a while, you would know that prior to 2003, 2004, when Council on Aging ran the public transportation, they were housed out of that facility. That's why you have garage doors. They used to receive their maintenance there. Transportation operated out of that building. It would be an opportunity to make some improvements to that site and move public transportation there. Again, it's located in the heart of our population of people seeking public transportation, so it would align nice and be able to utilize space that we currently have. Here's a look at the funding sources for the Nexus Center. We estimate the project to be not to exceed $16 million. Through the budget of fiscal year '24, we have been able to secure that amount so that the project can move forward. We do have 2 other opportunities that we're writing grants on to be able to hopefully reduce some of the general revenue that we have earmarked right now. But we are looking at securing a multi-purpose community facilities grant. It runs through the state DEO Office of Broadband. It really talks about connectivity with the public and access to the internet so that they can have telehealth opportunities, things like that. So we're looking to seek a grant up to $4 million. And then we also are writing a grant through the hazard mitigation grant. It's really the Code Plus, so anything above code, any costs that are related maybe to glazing, windows, doors, generator, roofing, anything that's above current code, you can apply to this grant, and it covers a portion up to $1.5 million is what we would be seeking. So we're hoping that between those 2 grant opportunities that we're able to reduce the amount coming out of that general revenue and be able to free up some of those dollars. We are looking at utilizing this building as an area to provide some housing of people in shelter during an activation of the EOC. So it would provide us another location. That's why we were building it to the Code Plus model. Similar to what we showed with the fire station, this is again just the estimated timeline, milestones of where we're at. We are submitting that 1 grant for the Code Plus in August. We're hoping to get awarded that grant in November of this year. We're also submitting that grant to DEO Office of Broadband in October, and we're hoping to find out in January if we got those grants. So moving forward, we estimate 90% design will probably be in November of this year, and we'll advertise, or actually we have already advertised for the construction manager at risk, which is Ajax. So we look to award the construction grant in December. Hopefully, the design will be complete in February. We'll do a groundbreaking in March, and then construction beginning sometime in May, complete summer or fall 2025. The other big ticket that we have is the SMA Healthcare Project. As you know, that was a public-private partnership that we had moved forward as part of our legislative appropriation request to construct an integrated stabilization unit and a men's residential treatment facility. So we're looking at designing and constructing a approximately 10,000 square foot facility that will allow for a 20-bed integrated stabilization unit as well as a men's substance abuse residential facility. This was part of our legislative appropriation for last year. I have on the screen the map. The location for this site had been intended to be across the street from their current footprint. So you've got that piece there on the south side of Justice Lane. We are acting as the project manager on this. The funds are coming to us through DCF, Division of Children and Families. We met with SMA Healthcare last Friday to work on a timeline and what does this look like. We will be advertising for a request for statement of qualifications using some language and some of the requirements that are necessary, not just for a medical facility, but also with the clientele and the type of unit that we are looking at. There are some statutory requirements for Baker Act and things like that that need to go into the design and implementation of a facility like this. So we are working closely with SMA. We will be the project manager on this. At some point in the future, once it's constructed, more than likely there will probably be some sort of a deed of conveyance, possibly with a reversionary clause. When you look at the property on the north side that their current footprint is in, that had previously been county lands that had been deeded over to them for the implementation of their projects or programs that they do now. So again, this is something moving forward. We're working with them, which then brings up the last part of the presentation, which is really talking about the proposed budget discussions for fiscal year '24. As it was presented to you at the tentative budget meeting, you have a balanced budget. All of the constitutional officer requests have been met. We've conducted one-on-one meetings with commission. And so at this point, I guess really I'm just seeking any input or guidance that you can provide, seeing if there's any requested changes needed to the budget. And then moving forward, probably in the fall, we'll have some future discussions on, legacy expenditures. I provided you a copy of those now, just trying to get some feedback from the board as to a direction moving forward. And then future discussion on alternative revenues. When we first started this back in December, and then again in January, we talked about alternative revenue sources. What does that look like? We would have a requirement to Department of Revenue if we wanted to exercise any of those alternative options. We have to notify DOR by December 31st of this year. So thinking back to what that looks like, we'll probably have to fine-tune that process in October, November, so that we can submit to them our request. It doesn't mean that you're definitely doing it. It just is putting them on notice that you intend to explore other options as far as alternative revenue sources. And it could be anything from a dedicated millage to a particular item. It could be maybe thinking about Polk County, how they do it, and we kind of talked when we were over there about, do we carve out something specific like MSTU, MSBU? Is it a dedicated millage? Anything that we would need to notify Department of Revenue for. It, again, does not mean that you're going to do it. It's just putting them on notice, which is the requirement by December 31st. You could explore it and then decide not to do it, but you're not going to be able to even explore it and decide not to do it if we don't put them on notice. So with that said, I open it up to you in a workshop to, again, just seeking input, guidance, direction.
When you're talking about MSTU, as we're talking about the beach replenishment, for example.
It could be the beach, it could be stormwater, it could be, we talked back in December, January, we kind of talked about carving out countywide EMS as one of the items. All of those things are going to be future discussions. They are not going to impact the current fiscal year 24 budget.
Chairman,
Yeah, Dave?
I've got something I'd like to, it'll take a couple of minutes for me to read it, but,
Okay.
and it's not a proposal, it's anything we have to make a decision on, but I do have something I think that might be worth pursuing at the end. So,
Go ahead.
So since I had started this and I've been in the public about it, so I might as well go through it. I want to talk about the points in support of the half-cent sales tax. State law for small counties, and I have that law, allows 31 Florida small counties to impose a 0.5% sales tax in addition to the 0.5% sales tax that's already there by a supermajority of the Board of County Commissioners. That would be 4 or 5 votes. Of the 31 counties in Florida that are classed as small counties like we are, 30 have imposed this tax. Flagler County is the only small county that does not do this. The half-cent sales tax would bring in revenue of approximately $9.7 million countywide. This would be divided up with the county and cities based on population and numbers of road miles to be maintained. If we use the same breakout as we did a few years back, it would be the city of Palm Coast would get $4.84 million, the county $4.4 million, Flagler Beach $264 million, and Bunnell $180 million. Based on current year data, county total spending was, it's big numbers, but $2 billion, it's a very large number, $575 million, of which, according to our Tourist Development Council, has done a lot of work on this, about $553 million of that was direct spending by visitors. There's a lot of contrast on this, but that would approximate about 21.5% of $2 million of this tax would come from visitors. In other words, people who don't live here and wouldn't be paying the taxes. So it's the only tax when we talk about tourist development tax and this kind of tax where the money comes in from other than county residents. The 0.5% sales tax, of course, paid by all citizens who are already paying a 7% sales tax. However, millage rate tax revenue comes from local citizens and businesses, none of which from tourists. So levying the 0.5% sales tax increase in sales tax would help eliminate special assessments for some road maintenance in the western part of the county and ease pressure on millage rate county increases. Flagler County Public Works on July 17th presented a roadway program update and budget discussion. This briefing clearly exposed the major shortfall in budget funding for Flagler County pavement work. A pavement management system is needed to correct the situation. About $2.96 million is not currently in the county budget, will be required each year to put PMS in operation to begin to improve this dire situation. Sources of this additional funding are very limited, and therefore the half-cent sales tax directed toward road management and improvement seems to be the best option at this point. And then I note the city of Palm Coast has determined that they have a very large problem with their road maintenance, problem with their city roads, so their share of the half-cent sales tax would be critical in helping them solve their problems. Another idea that maybe you don't realize is the city of Bunnell has a very large area where they operate, and they've recently annexed a lot of the western part of the county into the city of Bunnell. But they didn't annex one thing. We still have responsibility for roads in that area. So it's another problem that the county has directly, and it's not being funded by Bunnell. As far as the sales tax goes, sometimes people get all excited about that. For instance, one of the things we worry about is if people who have less money having to pay the sales tax. But food is not taxed this way. So the half-cent, you don't pay the half-cent sales tax on food. And a number of other items, you'll see some of the governor comes out with each year. So I'm not saying we're going to make any decisions on this today, but based on this, and there's a lot of other interests that would go into this before we do anything, but maybe it would be worthwhile to ask the staff to take a look at the budget as it now exists and see how it would look if we did have this half-cent sales tax in being, and maybe we can alleviate some of the other taxes that are going on in the county at the time. So compare the two and see if it would make a lot of sense. That's all I would say. But I think that the fact that 30 of the 31 counties that fall into this category under the law already do this. And it's nice we don't do it, I guess, but there is a reason that the 30 other counties have done it, and I do think it takes a little pressure off some of the other ways we have to come up with money. So I would think that maybe my point today would be, and I'm sorry it takes so long, is would it be worth at least having our staff take a look at how that would affect the budget if we had that half-cent sales tax available as far as millage rates?
I want to correct two things you said. The number that Bunnell gets and the number that Flagler Beach gets. You said it was 100 and some million.
Oh, I did. 264,000
Yeah,
to
there you
Flagler
go.
Beach and 180,000
There you
to
go.
Bunnell. But my point about Bunnell, I was getting to that point about Bunnell is we're still doing the roads, most of the roads in Bunnell. That comes out under the county. So that was just some thoughts, and I know it's controversial when it comes to taxes and things like that. But if it makes sense financially to do that, you know, and overall, to get end up with roughly the same amount of money, it might be an easier way to go. Anyway, just a thought.
Yeah.
Andy?
Andy, do you want to talk?
Not right now.
Okay, I'm glad to see he read, so I got some of my notes here, my first lovely budget season. So this is just my conceptual idea here. So I'd like to see us deliver. We're a really good board. We work very well together. I think we can deliver 3 very important victories for the residents. And so I want to talk about getting real tax relief for the citizens, being fair to all our county taxpayers, and making sure that we have safe and quality county roads. So my first proposal is this. And my proposal is to ask this board and legal to do what we should have done a long time ago. And that is to end the Daytona North Special Tax District and treat those residents as every other. So they continue to pay their property taxes, they receive the same county servants, nothing more, nothing less of any other county resident. They pay property taxes, close to $2 million, just that neighborhood, and gas taxes on top of that. This special assessment has really nothing special about it. They're getting regular services, nothing above and beyond the regular services. We've adopted those as county roads, and to me, that special taxing district, while it may have made sense 40 years ago, makes no sense and lacks any rationale. So secondly, I think the taxpayers deserve real property tax relief. So when I say that, I think that we need to work very hard this year for a significant cut. It means, you know, we're going to decrease the rate so that even with the increased values, they'll actually feel the tax cut we give them. So I was looking at our numbers in the recent years, and our counties received, I think, $20 million in federal funds, tens of millions in state funds, a very highest level of ad valorem due to increased properties, but at no point have we seen any real solutions come to achieve greater efficiency and cost savings. You're seeing, even with the money that we're getting from the state, we still need more money to do these projects, and we're going to ask the state for more projects next year, which is going to be in the same predicament. You know, so after looking at the budget, what I've been given of the budget, I'm confident this board and the staff can find cost savings. And I think we can do it with zero real-world impact. And I say that, I think it's not correct if we say that we'll have to cut services and or infrastructure to provide real tax relief. I think it's there. I think we can do it, and I think we should. And then lastly, this is my proposal. So we heard from county staff that our roads are in dire needs. And the proposal was the new sales tax, and I'm not comfortable with the new sales tax, the half-cent tax. So my suggestion is to reroute the 8.9 for the proposed Nexus Center to the roads now. And the staff can pursue state funding for the Nexus Center so it can still be funded. I would gladly advocate personally to Speaker Renner and Senator Hudson that that project be funded by the state this year in legislative. I'm sure that the chair could do that as well for us. We saw the city of Palm Coast got $54 million in state funding this legislative session, which was double what we got. And I think that we can convince the state to help fund us as well in these projects. But we know that our roads can't wait. And if we reroute that 8.9 to the new, from the new Nexus Center to our road project, it solves our road dilemma now. I think that's important to discuss, you know, and I think that should be an option for us.
Thank you. Don, everything? Andy, any questions?
Yeah, it's an interesting year, and I think we've learned a lot with recently, and I view my role on the dais and as a county commissioner, as an elected official, is to build trust with the electorate first and foremost, and I think the recent problems with the half-penny sales tax attempt and with Palm Coast and the franchise fee has further eroded some of that. So as with Ms. Pennington, I'm not a fan at this time of the half-penny. I think there's potential to revisit it, but it is going to take a much more dedicated approach to being fair with the electorate on how those monies will be spent, transparency on those issues, and further clarifying some other problems within the budget. I think I have to spend more time looking at the impacts of the Nexus Center. I've raised plenty of concerns about the amount of money that have gone to it. We've already invested a pretty good point. I would rather take a measured approach at this point to look at how we can implement the road changes with the current balanced budget that's been proposed and meet those requirements within that. And that's kind of where I've come from with this, and I think further discussion on Daytona North as well. I don't know that I've come to a place on Daytona North yet. I keep, you know, we looked at the stormwater plan, we've looked at the road plan, and there's a significant amount of work that is centered in Daytona North on both of those plans. Daytona North is a small city in and of itself, and I'm not sure that getting rid of the service tax, maybe not the tripling of it right now, but double. I think there's still room for me to kind of evaluate that. I think because of the density that we've got of residents and that there's a need for additional, for focusing funds directly to those residents from that service tax, but and understanding that they pay just like everybody else their property taxes, but the funds there, due to the concentrated population in that area, I think they would benefit from improvements that the tax generates. And again, I think it's putting together a clear plan on how those funds benefit them. So I mean, just some rough thoughts on this budget process. I think I would like to see us make some progress on those roads that are on the poor list that we've identified. But, you know, look forward to other discussions from the board.
Anything else, commissioners?
I mean,
If not,
I've said what I said. I thought part of this half-cent sales would probably be able to alleviate some of the Daytona North taxes. I
it
mean,
would,
that's
it
one
would
of my
zero it
points.
out. It would,
What?
it would zero it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think we got to decide, I think it's a good discussion. I mean, I think there are possibilities, a number of ways we could go on this, but I don't think we're going to, I hope we don't get to a point where we keep thinking we can raise or lower the millage rate. Remember, a large percentage of the people who live in this county are under the homestead exemption. You can't, raising taxes or lowering taxes doesn't do much for if you're on the 3% limit. Your taxes pretty much stay the same. So, I mean, and I don't know what you can do about the fact that the value of the property goes up. I don't think that's a bad thing. It's kind of part of the world the way we know it right now. And we have had significant inflation increases in the last 2 years. And it's very hard to get around those because, for instance, as you raise the salaries for the employees, like the police and the fire, you don't get, even if we have deflation next year, I mean, you're not going to be able to lower those salaries. You're still going to have to absorb those increases that you've done over the last couple of years. So it's really the revenue. How are we going to do the revenue, and what do we need to do? I mean, theoretically, you could cut the budget 25%. Just cut it 25% and nobody dies. But you probably will not like to live in this county after you're in that kind of a financial session for 2 or 3 years. So I think you got to look. It's a balancing act, and it's a tough one. But be careful about doing things now that have tremendous implications 3 or 4 or 5 years from now. And so no one likes taxes. I mean, nobody likes taxes. But we have had very high inflation rates in the last couple of years.
So I don't disagree with you about we can't control the inflation or the housing, but what we can control is our wants. And some of these projects are wants, and we're just adding to the wants next year. And you see the 10 million doesn't cut it to cover the cost. And then we're going to have maintenance and extra staffing and all of that. That we can control. And that's why we should do our best effort to work through the legislative piece of it and the grant piece to get some of that funded. But right now we have a road problem, and it's been kicked down the, in the stormwater problem, kick the can. And we have this opportunity while the money's here and the values are up, that we have it to start to deal with the poor roads without having to implement another tax. I know that's hard, to trade up one, but and it doesn't mean the Nexus Center goes away. I think we can work and advocate, this board can, with our legislative partners to get the Nexus prioritized and funded. I think we owe it to the taxpayers to
we
attempt
stop
the
it this
funding
year,
of it.
we immediately lose $500,000.
No, we wouldn't lose it if
Yeah, we do. We lose
Yeah,
that.
you would. It'd be
It's
gone.
good through July of next year, correct?
I don't
It's
think
gone.
I think it's gone if we if
Okay,
we
well,
don't.
you're adding a $16 million project where we could have fixed roads and stormwater.
Well,
That's just my.
And just, I mean, further compounding some of the complexities is coming up. We've already determined that we're shuffling funds around because of the additional cost for Hall Creek Road. We've got to find another $1 million just to get that project going. So we're already shuffling monies from pot to pot. And I mean, it's good. I think, a new board, this has been going on for a little while when you talk about the Nexus Center, but, we've got a lot of wants out there.
Yeah, and we're going to get awarded a lot of ones next year, and we're going to be really shuffling. And then will the value hold on the housing on top of it, It's a scary predicament, so. But we know roads are the priority. It brings in economic development, it's safety, getting fire trucks down roads, et cetera. It's the big issue out in Daytona North that we just keep, grading over and over. So, and we're also getting, I think, close to $3 million this year from Scrap and Scrap. So if you were to partner that with this Nexus money, we could really put a dent in our road issue, just like that.
If I could, when you mentioned the scrap and scop, they are already taken into account. So when you look at Old Hall Creek, that's already the money that's already earmarked at the state for that. And the next one up is Hargrove Grade, which, again, I think, a lot of the projects we have sit in the city of Bunnell, and they're projects that we're utilizing, again, it's one county, but they're largely projects that benefit, I think a relatively small population. I think that when you're looking at the totality of impact, when you look at the road projects, the shortfall that I brought forward at your last meeting, you had about $5 million locally that we were deficient. $2 million of it was for Public Works to start a program that we currently don't have. The remaining amount was $3 million out of engineering, and that was the local shortfall for Old Hall Creek, which was about $1 million. We've already found that money by moving some pots around. The only thing remaining that's unmet for roads next year is about $2 million for Hargrove. So when I brought forward that Nexus Center idea, there's roughly, I think it was like $4.5 million or $5.5 million, potentially $5.5 million that can be coming back in the way of another grant, which would free up general revenue for that local match or shortfall for Hargrove. So of the shortfalls that we had for engineering using scrap and scop, we've plugged the hole on one. So currently you're still short $2 million for Hargrove. And potentially, if you got this multi-purpose community facilities grant, up to $4 million, or the Hazard Mitigation Code Plus, $1.5 million, that's money that would be coming back, not using general revenue. And as I say, you need to have a plan moving forward. We are a community growing, and you need to have a plan on what those facilities and services look like, and to delay or not construct something. It's the same reason why I say utilize the property that we have in Bunnell to free up the 2.4 that we have over there, to be able to support a traffic light, to be able to support the Public Works building that we've owned since 2017 and haven't done anything with it because we don't have funding for it. It's an opportunity to check those two things off the wish list. You look at building out or fixing up the Belterre building for public transportation. Again, we're busting at the seams. This building alone has had renovations every year that we've ever been in it. General Services was never equipped to co-locate with Public Works, and being able to move them out into a facility. I understand Commissioner Dance's point of, do we need to carve out part of that property? What if we move all of Public Works out there? We currently own 8 lots between Mango and Nutwood. It's 9 acres of property in Daytona North that we have a storage yard for Public Works. Bring all that to that co-located location and put those properties back on the market so they can be developed for residential. We get complaints all the time about our storage yards out there in residential. They don't like it when we're coming and going and storing stuff. It wasn't intended. It happens to be where we have our lay down yard for materials, but move that to Public Works and co-locate it and free up that space. But start attacking issues that help us into the future instead of just arbitrarily picking things by deferring or delaying, because that's what we've always done and we've never gotten ahead. And part of this process, and maybe I've shared it with some of you, I apologize if it hasn't been with all of you, coming up with a plan. What do you want to be when you grow up? And let's look at Flagler County as we sit today and come up with what do we want to be as we evolve from a small county to a mid-sized community. And so let's take a look at who are we most like, whether it be coastal communities, population, what other counties are out there that have that dynamic of very small population of unincorporated, but yet we have a large city with the city of Palm Coast. what do other entities do as far as alternative revenues? Because we do need to have a plan. If we have a downturn in the economy, if we have a devaluation in property values, our only recourse right now is to raise the millage on the property values, because we have no other plan. So I've asked finance to come up with a book to kind of outline where are we, where do we want to be. It's kind of like a strategic plan, but it's a financial strategic plan. And where are those things so that we are ready for the future? Maybe we need to, steal an idea from St. John's or Nassau County or, St. Lucie County. We're looking at, putting together this big picture of all of our revenues, expenditures, what do we forecast them to be along with our population, and what are the needs of the community as we continue to grow. And we've never really had a really robust plan. We've always been, and again, it's been reactionary, it's not being proactive, but it's kind of coming up with the, just like we have a strategic plan, what does it look like for us? What is it, like a financial forecast and plan? To help move us forward.
I just wanted to say, I do think, as we continue to look outside the box, some of the grants that you've been able to mention that have a lot of promise are things that will be able to help us move. If we do continue to move on with Nexus, those grants will be able to start funding some of those other priorities and the needs. So those are areas where we have to continue to work hard and get creative and look for some of those outside sources that will help us be able to free up some money.
Yeah, I think that we should move forward with the balanced budget that we have. I would like you to look at a millage rate reduction of 0.01, just to see what that does. It's not much, but it's $1 million, I think. It's $1.5 million. But,
Mr. Chair, do you mean 0.1 or 0.01?
0.1, I'm sorry, 0.1. Because I believe the number is $1.5 million on that. But I like the budget as presented. It's balanced. It solves, there's a potential to solve all our road problems for this year through grant relief. I think it's a good budget, and I think the staff has done a remarkable job in putting it together. So I think we should, I would like to see the 0.1 reduction. How you think, Heidi, we should take that? Other than that, I like this budget.
So
There's a small reduction in the debt side.
That's what I was going to mention. When I brought forward the tentative budget, we were already showing a slight reduction on the debt service side. If we were to close the gap and make it a full tenth of a mil, I think it's somewhere around $1.2 million, rather than the larger version, because we already did reduce some of it down.
Yeah.
But if we're going to look at this reduction to get us a full tenth of a mil, I look to you as a board to determine what does that look like. Are you considering that reduction among all of the constitutional officers as well, or because 1.2 million, 1.3 million is going to be a lot to cut from the board side?
No, I would share it with the constitutionals. It's not a big hit if we spread it out.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm taking kind of the other side here.
Right.
But what I would say is that if we're not going to consider, other than millage increases, additional revenue, if we're not, apparently that's kind of what you're saying. Right. If we're not going to do that, then I have a hard time being in the same situation we got ourselves into last year, where at the very last minute, we did do the tenth of a mil reduction, and we hit the staff with that like the same weekend as they're trying to finalize the budget and get it voted. So the earlier we get to kind of concurrence on this, I think the better, rather than wait till the last minute. So if I like to, I mean, if we're not going to consider additional revenue sources, then I like the idea of where the budget is now, and we don't cut any more of the millage rate back other than the slight reduction in the debt service.
I'm not saying we're going to cut .1, but I'd like to see what the results are of spreading it out among the constitutionals. Everybody takes a little
Yeah,
bite
I just say
Right.
let's get that done,
now.
get it done now, soon, so we don't do anything crazy like we did last year.
Yeah, I think from the discussion here, it's clear that we don't have 4 votes to do the,
I agree.
do the
I would like to see
half-cent
what that
sales
would do. I think in the long run, that'll help, but, I don't have the 4, we don't have the 4
we don't have the 4 votes. So as much as the sales tax would alleviate a lot of our problems, I don't see that passing. So Heidi, can you do that? Get the constitutionals involved and
Mr. Chair,
and just see what
Do we have
see how loud they
consensus on that?
scream. What?
Do we have consensus on that?
I have consensus.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I would just counsel caution on involving the constitutional officers. I think we've had discussions, and Heidi's pretty much come to closure with them on their budgets, that she's, that's incorporated in what we have. I mean, obviously, we can do what we want in terms of that if we come to agreement, but, I mean, we're pretty far down the road with them already on those budget discussions, so.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the time to
Just-
do
just a
that is
thought.
not in August. I mean, if we're going to have those discussions with the constitutionals,
think
it's
it's too late?
before August.
Too late?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
All right.
it's here, Greg, it's here. There's 688,000 allocated for increased staff time to Daytona North. There's over 25 auto leases that are new leases, so it's here to find. So,
But we're not making any motions at this meeting,
No.
right?
No.
Anyway, So,
So do we want, do you agree to let Heidi look at the .1 mil and take a look at that just from us? Or do you want to not do that at all?
yeah, I mean, I want any kind of cut that we can do for the mill. I just think that I'm worried that we're going to end up with a bunch of new funding for buildings that we have no money to operate. Lights, people, car leases,
I
value
understand the same
value
problem.
going
and
down.
My
Yeah.
view of that is
It
the
ends
other
up
way.
being the same problem.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
saying, you're saying, reduce.
I'm
and
saying that we
saying
reduce projects.
To do all
scope.
those projects, it's going to take more money. and
Right, we
where-
should
where are you gonna
reduce,
come
we
from?
should reduce the creep, the wants for now, but that's my take, that's my 2 cents.
Okay, let me get to put the
Yes, sir.
.1 reduction, mill reduction to bed or not. Do we do that drill or not? Dave?
Excuse me, but the-
I'm looking for a consensus or not on going through the drill of looking at the budget with a .1 mil reduction.
I'm not in favor of that.
Okay, Andy?
I'm, at this point, again, being August and being as we're getting to the first and second hearings, I think this discussion should have been had prior to this. We've had 8 meetings of the budget.
Well, it's been brought up. It's been brought up.
Okay,
that
but
wanna
we
do
haven't,
this.
it hasn't progressed to the point to where you're asking staff now to go to it. I think there is a deficit as much as, I think there's room to continue to massage the budget. And as I look at ways to reduce some expenses, that those funds need to go into the roads. And I think that is how we start making progress on the roads.
Ms. Pennington?
Well, I'm going to agree with Andy, we need to allocate for roads, start a road program this year.
Mr. O'Brien?
On the question of millage, I'm fine with flat millage where we stand today.
Okay, that's it, flat millage. Any other comments?
It says there's a reduction on the debt side.
There is.
Yes.
Yeah. That'll help us. That'll help us. Any other comments? If not, I'll open up to public comment. Anybody in the public wish to comment on the budget, please step forward, state your name and where you live, and address your comments to the chair. Hi.
I'm Bonnie Turner, and I'm from Daytona North. And since our last meeting that I showed up at, I've done a little bit of digging. And this is what I found on Ashley Moody's myfloridalegal.com website. Special assessments are the charges assessed against the property of some particular locality because that property derives some special benefit from the expenditure of the money collected by the assessment, in addition to the general benefit accruing to all property or citizens. Special assessments place a special or local charge on the land involved on the basis that the property derives a special benefit in addition to the general benefit to the public. Such assessments are imposed on the theory that the portion of the community being assessed receives some special or peculiar benefit which enhances the value of the property in proportion to the special assessment. The power to make special assessments can be exercised only for special improvements. It cannot be exercised to burden particular property and the owners thereof with the cost of general and governmental benefits and expenditures. Special assessments cannot be imposed to pay for an improvement which is primary of general public benefit. So, that being said, I know you're going back to the court case, but it's obvious that we have been absorbed into the county. We have been. You govern it. You make the road rules and laws. Who can drive on it, who can't, four-wheelers can't, speed limit signs, the whole 9 yards. So you govern it so it belongs to you. So technically, and we get nothing special. If any one of you can point out anything special we get in Daytona North, we don't even get the benefits of our property taxes being used out there. Our millage taxes go to the whole rest of the county. They do, the whole rest of the county, but we get nothing out of it because we have to pay that special assessment. We have to pay for everything. You come and get a dead dog, we have to pay for it. You do the canals that service the whole county, and don't say they don't. They do. It keeps everything from flooding. And the roads, I mean, they're subpar. They wouldn't pass one Florida DOT inspection, none of them. You should see what they did to mine Friday. It was perfect on my end, and they brought an auger, and they chewed it up and just smoothed it out. Now all the base is gone. So it's just, as soon as it rains, it's gone. It's gone. And I mean, you know, and it's obvious that it belongs to you because you have applied for grants to the Florida Department of Transportation on our behalf, county roads being fixed. Does the Florida Department of Transportation know that you're charging the citizens for what you're asking grant money for? Do they know that? No. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
How you doing?
Good.
My name is Joe Freitas, and I live at 1317 Elder Street in the free part of the county called the Mondex. I heard a bunch of discussions about taxes out in my neighborhood. It's the frontage property tax. And my understanding from a court, from a judge, the county does not own the roads out there, and they're not responsible for the maintenance. This was in March of 1977 that court decided that over a plaintiff. The plaintiff lost, the county won. My problem is, where do you get this 58 cents a foot for the property tax when you're already charging this property tax? That's my biggest concern. So if I can get an answer to that, I'd appreciate it, because I know you don't all own the roads, and most of the people that live out in the Mondex think you do. You don't own the roads out there. You've agreed not to own the roads in 1977. Pardon me, I shake a little bit because I got Parkinson's early stages. So I'd like some kind of answer to why you're going to raise my property tax to $1.16 a foot. You got folks out there that are having a tough time making a living and paying their taxes now. All you're going to do out there is create longer food bank lines, more theft, Thank God we got good law enforcement and good fire, because that's, as far as the roads go, you haven't done worth a damn as far as I'm concerned. All you've done is over the years, since I've been there, in fact, my roads got worse. All you're doing is flattening the roads out, putting a Band-Aid on there. The water's got nowhere to go because you got ridges alongside the road. So all the water that's getting into ditches from the rain is sure not from the roads. And the water from the roads not going anywhere because they're flat. You got no crown, not one crown. I went down Nutwood the other day to my daughter's house, and all the roads I traveled out there had one little bit of crown on the road. You're worthless as far as getting the roads done. You go out there, you just scrape it. You don't maintain it. You put a drag through there and you say, oh, we maintained the road. I take care of my own swale. I get maybe 3 times a year at the most. A guy comes through with the mower and he cuts the ditch grass out about a foot high. He just started cleaning out. I got to go down there with a weed eater and I got to clean the ditch out. I take care of my own ditch. Now there's ditches out there that people don't take care of, but that's their problem, not mine. But as far as the roads go, you got to give me some respect. I gave you respect on your presentation.
Wrap it up.
You need to fix the roads out there the right way. Quit pretending you're out doing the maintenance out there, because you're not.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next speaker. Microphone over here. There you go. Yep.
Hi, I'm Judy Long. I'm out there in the Mondax off Aspen Street. There's some things that I don't quite understand, but that thing that went on 40 years ago with that lawsuit, where that they said that the county would take our money for fixing roads in town, but now all through Flagler, all except for our area. Now, there is a slight problem there because nobody knew about this until that it was at the last meeting. Well, not anybody that I knew. And one of the things is that this property's been sold and sold and sold. Okay? Shouldn't have there been a disclaimer in there somewhere whenever that you first started there that you were going to get taxation without representation? Nobody was made aware of this. And I know even when you go to gated community, they make you aware of all the rules and what everything is charged for and what isn't. Now, what I'm thinking is that there needs to be a lawsuit brought forth, but I don't know if it's the county that you should sue for 40 years of taxation without representation, or I don't know how you could pass it on to the previous owners, because there's been so many and none of them were informed either, so they couldn't be at fault. But you all knew it and we didn't. Up until like a month ago. Now, we've all been kept in the dark, but I do think that is a serious issue, and that is taxation without representation. And then after what she brought up to you, it showed you what you're doing is illegal anyway. So, thank you very much. And one of the things is you got to understand, out in that area, we have a lot of people out there that are on fixed incomes. You guys start jacking this price up, all you're doing is land grabbing, because you know that they aren't going to be able to pay for it. There's going to be so many. We've got so many out there. You guys would rather have people living out in the woods than let somebody live in a camper on your property with 4 walls around them where they're saved. You do the same thing over on Beachside. You got people living underneath the bridges and stuff. That's not right. We're unincorporated. Y'all have decided that you don't want nothing to do with our roads and stuff, so why are we even following by your rules? We're unincorporated for a lot of places. I mean, we're not even allowed to ride our golf carts down the road. Now, you tell us how small we are? Okay. We're not even allowed to ride golf carts on the road, on the off-roads. I'm not saying the main roads. And that's not right at all either. Why do you guys have such a grasp on what we do and what we don't do out there when you don't want nothing to do with us? From what I can see, most of the stuff that gets done there is done by state taxes, not by county taxes. And that's not fair at all. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Frank Best. I live out there in the Mondex, and we wonder why the county won't do their job right. I've talked to the two big boss men that y'all had and asked the same question. Now I'm gonna ask y'all why it takes 3 pieces of equipment, 3 guys, takes 1.5 days to do one road when I used to do the same roads in a half a day by myself. That's why we don't want nobody out there. I mean, because they don't do it right. They cut the ditches, half the ditch. That's all. I had to call and get my trees trimmed up. It took me 2 years to do that. They keep saying their machines broke down or something or other. Well, fix it. I mean, we're people out there just want to live a normal life. We don't want this city life. If y'all want it out there, y'all go out there and live out there, and y'all see how it is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker. Come on down.
Hi, my name's Tammy Sander. I'm a resident of Palm Coast. I'm here as a private citizen today, not representing any organizations. And I just want to first thank you all for, I know the amount of effort and thought that goes into a budget on a much smaller scale. I can only imagine what a budget of this size entails. So thank you for considering all of the aspects of the budget for the citizens of the county. My personal thought is that while some of these projects would be wonderful for our county this coming year may not be the best time. And I understand grants and grants for certain things can only be used for those certain things. They can't be moved around, and there's time frames on those grants, and all of that plays into it. But I did notice that there was a large amount of general funding going towards some of these projects, and just consider if there is a way to still meet grant requirements and to maybe extend the projects another year or two, so the economy, generally speaking, has time to balance out a little bit. You all know that inflation over the last few years has been double digits, and everyone is feeling that. So I'm not sure if that's something that, again, within grant requirements that can be weighed, but something to consider. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you for your time. Next speaker. See no one approaching the podium, I'll close public speaking and bring it back to the commission and entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. We appreciate it.